moment. The nightcap was the one close game we've had thus far. And if it's close late, the folks in Washington say we'll ride with 5 because he doesn't blink. How about this 3rd and 6 throw? What a pass in traffic to Giammi Brown, who had a touchdown a bit earlier. And then it got into a situation with clock management and first downs where if Washington could get enough first downs, another great throw.
Look at that.
Giammi
drops out. He does a great job of seeing Austin Eckler, throws the ball right by his ear hole.
Look at that. Look at this. Kelce is a monster, and he's chasing, but all he gets of 5 is the towel.
Nope.
He needed to get him on the ground, but you're not going to get him on the ground.
How dare you mess up my great play, Jaden Daniels. It's going to be the star.
And now it's Zane Gonzalez. They got it to the left hash, and it's a good thing they did. That was leaking, but it just...
Did you see how nervous this dude was before he kicked that? I thought he was going to miss it.
Apparently he has OCD.
He touched his hair about 15 times.
He got
Okay, all right.
He's got some OCD things, and he's trying to manage that, but hey,
matters.
Push comes to shove. It's good. DQ, and Washington gets the victory. And this is what the graphic looks like moving forward. It is Washington and the Commanders with their first playoff win in 20 years. They'll head to Detroit Saturday night to take on the 1 seed Lions. And the Eagles will be at home in the link again. They are waiting to see who they get from tonight's game. JK, I'm going to get to you on the Eagles in just a moment. I'm interested just in this guy who we've talked about, Ryan, all year. When the situation and the stakes are at their most frenzied, he is calm and excellent exclusively. I am asking you to explain how he does that.
I absolutely can't. I'd be much more rich if I could. I always go back to watching him in his freshman year at Arizona State.
Right.
And no matter what, the kid was just like this. And you think as some of the stakes heightened, he would be different, but he wasn't. When the Gonzalez kick hit the upright and then went through the net, he didn't even smile. He didn't laugh. It was like it's on to the next. There are two other teams in the NFC that make you defend for all 4 downs to get 10 yards. It's the Detroit Lions. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles have an unstoppable play. The Detroit Lions have a physical front and Ben Johnson who is creative. The Washington Commanders have Jaden Daniels.
That's it.
And because of that, they say you have to stop us on all 4 downs because when the stakes are the highest, our guy, the rookie, can execute at a level that your team cannot compete with.
And they go for it on 4th down. Think of the trust. This is a rookie on the road, Swag. You're not supposed to be able to do this. What's your assessment of how he's able to be as calm as he is at all times?
First of all, shout out to Dan Quinn. Like Dan Quinn said, man, ain't nobody even expect us to be here. I'm going to go for it every damn 4th down. I got a guy that can absolutely execute it. I'm reading this book right now called The Let Them Theory by this writer, Mel Robbins, right?
Okay.
This lady, we have something in our brain that creates fight or flight. And we have something in the rest of our brain that settles us once we feel that emotion comes on. I don't think Jaden has that thing. Like the fight or flight little thing up in there. Y'all got to research it, but it's in the book. Here's the thing, man. If you look at all of those plays we just showed in the highlight, Jaden played those plays like they were the first play of the game in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And I think that is rare, man. It's super rare not to get caught up in the emotion of the game. Think about how this game was going. It was back and forth, defenses making stops. It was back and forth, back and forth. They couldn't get anything going on the ground like usual. And in those moments, like we've seen this year, it's just a calming presence. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for athletes like that. Like we see them more often in basketball where you know a guy's going to perform at perform at a very high level. I never see him flinch. It seems comfortable for him to be in game winning or losing situations, which to your point, RC, is very, very odd. When you think about the stakes of a football game, it's win or go home.
And by the way,
he's got great control.
If you want to hear more from Mel Robbins, she's on the Pivot tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
There you go.
Good plug.
Real talk.
Real talk.
Let Them Theory. That's a good book. That's a good book.
I thought the book we were going to talk about is Inner Excellence. That's what AJ was
What do you think about it? We don't got to bring that up right now.
I got no problem with the man. There you go. Hey, listen. I saw the passage
on the sideline.
That's a well-read book. That's a well-read book. He was just
As long as his mind is in the game when he's on the field, that's all I care about.
I will this now. There's a coaching opening down in Dallas. I'm looking for a little color here on how we arrived at this is the end game, Adam.
Well, Scott, the Dallas Cowboys are now the 7th team this season to make a head coaching change. And what happened was last week, Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy had a series of meetings involving the football team itself, the Dallas Cowboys. But at no time in those conversations did the two discuss a contract. And today, the Dallas Cowboys said that the two sides are officially parting ways, with Mike McCarthy set to be able to talk to other teams, and the Chicago Bears and New Orleans Saints both are expected to be interested, and the Dallas Cowboys now launching into a head coaching search a week later than some of the other teams in the league. That means that Bill Belichick is in North Carolina, Mike Vrabel is in New England, and the Cowboys cannot interview coordinators such as Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson in Detroit and Steve Spagnuolo and Matt Nagy in Kansas City. But they can and will conduct a search here to try to find the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, it's just new. It's just beginning. We'll see where that brings them. A lot of names floating around out there. I think at some point in time, they could have some level of interest in the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, potentially maybe Jason Witten, an old-time franchise great. But this is very early on, very preliminary, and we'll see ultimately where Jerry Jones goes with this search. But the Cowboys are now in the market for a new head coach.
Adam, thank you very much. We are pleased to be joined now by Hall of Famer and 3-time Super Bowl champion, of course, with the Dallas Cowboys, and that's Troy Aikman. And Troy, when this news comes out, you know this is going to land in your lap, right? When we were in Dallas this year for a couple of games, look, the topic has always been out there about Jerry and Mike and what might happen, and now they've chosen to go in their separate ways. I don't think Mike will be out of a job for too long, but this job's as coveted as any because you're going to run the Dallas Cowboys. In what direction do you think they ought to look?
Well, I thought Mike McCarthy would be the head coach, so this is a bit of a surprise for me today that he's not going to be. And what went into those conversations that Schefter talked about, I'm not exactly sure, but it suggests that there's not a real plan. I mean, and the fact that they haven't had the opportunity to maybe interview a Ben Johnson and some of these others, Aaron Glenn. I think that what Schefter said as far as Kellen Moore being a candidate, that seems logical to me. A guy who has familiarity with the building. He's worked obviously with the Cowboys and with Jerry Jones, and they know each other very well. In fact, when Mike McCarthy got the job, it was told to Mike that Kellen Moore would be the offensive coordinator. So that's how much the Jones family thinks of him. Beyond that, it's hard to imagine. As far as a coveted job, I don't know that that's accurate. I mean, really? I do think the Cowboys are obviously a high-profile team. Whoever is covered or whoever is head coach of that team is certainly going to draw a lot of attention. But I think most football people that take over as a head coach, they want to do it on their terms.
That's fair.
That's hard to do. And it's, if you take a Dan Campbell, for instance, is Dan Campbell if he's with the Dallas Cowboys? It's hard to imagine that he is. It's hard to imagine that a lot of these coaches might be. So I love the Dallas Cowboys. I played there for 12 years. I wish them well, but to say that it's a coveted job, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that.
Maybe it's semantics, and let me just be clear. I agree with what you're saying because, Swag, you look at that job, and it's the star, and it's Dallas, and it's all that comes with it, but you're also hamstrung to a degree by the money you've got sunk in a couple of star players, and you're going to have to pay Mike if you want to keep him. How do you view what that job is?
I agree with Troy. Therein lies – there's a difference in flash and substance.
Cake and icing.
Flash.
Cake and icing.
Yeah, exactly, and that's something we talk about this quite often when we get a chance to sit together and talk. But ultimately, when you look at this job, and I kind of sum this job up in this regard: if the owner is not going to change, are you willing to hire a coach with enough cachet to challenge you on not changing? And it's what's going to be best for the locker room and the guys that's playing on the field. We throw this word distractions around a lot in football. Things are happening, and there's a lot of distractions going on. Distractions are a part of playing in the NFL. That's not singular to any team in the league as far as having distractions. The difference is in Dallas is the guy that makes the decisions creates the distractions. And that is why it's so difficult to say this is a coveted job. You'll take the job because they'll pay you $5-6 million. We human. We understand that. But if you have a plan long term to win, implement a culture, change the way things are being done. That's something you really have to think about as a coach that's taking this job seriously, knowing that you play it on the margins anyway.
RC, to these points that are being made, because they carry a lot of weight and they make a lot of sense, could that preclude them from getting ultimately a difference-making type of coach?
Well, I do believe it makes it very difficult to get someone who is going to be a culture changer because that's what normally happens with these teams. When you move on from coaches, you want the culture to be better. You want the chemistry within the locker room to be better, along with the actual X's and O's and the strategic parts of football. That culture is Jerry Jones' culture. So many times when Mike Tomlin comes in and takes over for Coach Cowher in the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the culture was already great, he added his touch to it and he had to make it his own. There is no making the Dallas Cowboys your own as a head coach. It's how do you fall in line and compromise with Jerry Jones being the owner. And to Troy's point, it's a coveted job because it's one of 32. People want to be head coaches in the NFL, and you will have the spotlight and attention on you, but the attention is squarely focused on the general manager and owner most times, and it makes it very difficult to operate in a football-like way.
Jason, they were a rival, we understand. And in the NFC East, everyone's rivals with everyone, which is why I've always loved it. But looking at them from the outside looking in, how did you view their circumstance as it related to Jones and the coach and whatever that was?
I mean, listen, they always had success. I mean, we fought each other hard. It wasn't like we dominated that matchup.
Yeah.
I think we actually lost more of them to the Dallas Cowboys, even though organizationally we have more success. And I do think that Jerry, the way the organization is run, it just feels like that's more the issue than it is the coaching. It feels like, especially this offseason, they didn't make the investment in the free agency. They didn't make the moves necessary to really compete. And all of a sudden now McCarthy is kind of being phased out. But I also wonder, what's happened, because it felt like McCarthy was trending towards being back. That's what it certainly sounded like.
I mean, what has happened? He thought he would.
So what has happened?
And he had support from guys like Parsons that were pretty vocal about it.
So what has happened recently?
I don't know.
Did something happen in those meetings, or does Jerry have a plan that he already knows where he wants to go? Because it feels like you already got this guy coming back. It felt like he was trending there, and all of a sudden it's changed.
I don't think they would have spent the 4 days if there was not a thought that he was going to continue. There was something in those conversations. I've been led to believe that potentially it could have been the length of a contract. Never got into the actual terms of what the money would be, but if the contract was going to be a 2-year deal versus a 5-year deal, was that a no-go for Mike McCarthy?